For 38 years, a man was waiting for a miracle until the day that Jesus arrived. In today's faith-affirming finding, I discuss the archaeological discovery known as the Pool of Bethesda, a place where the gospel account and historical evidence align in powerful ways.
Welcome to Faith Affirming Findings, a podcast dedicated to sharing with you
the incredible discoveries from the field of biblical archaeology.
These findings will strengthen your faith, affirm the historicity of Scripture, and provide you with unique insights into the culture and background of the Bible.
Now, here is your host, Associate Professor of Bible Exposition at Dallas Theological Seminary,
Dr. Paul Weaver.
Welcome back to Faith Affirming Findings. This video and 49 others like it come straight out of my book by the same name, Faith Affirming Findings, published by Kriegel Publishing. It is set to be released in early 2026, so make sure to get a copy of your own. Today we're discussing a fascinating archaeological discovery, the Pool of Bethesda. This site is not just a footnote in history, it's a vivid window into the world Jesus walked and the miracles he performed. The Pool of Bethesda was uncovered in the 1880s, but here's a little twist. It's actually two pools, two large pools separated by a dividing wall, known today as the North and South Pools. In 1949, a scholar confirmed what excavators had suspected. These twin pools were indeed the biblical Pool of Bethesda, the very place where Jesus healed a man who had been ill for 38 years. This site has been a puzzle for archaeologists. Excavation spanned over a century, and the challenge was huge. Imagine digging around ancient churches, a Crusader chapel, and modern buildings, all layered on top of the pools. Archaeology is a destructive science. To get down to the layer that we're interested in, you have to carefully excavate layers on top of it. And many layers there are. Early Christians often built basilicas over holy places where Jesus taught, Jesus lived, and Jesus performed miracles. The Pool of Bethesda certainly met that criteria. Over time, 3 churches were built there: a Byzantine-era church, a Crusader chapel, and a Crusader church that is still used today. But beneath all this history lie the pools themselves. Archaeologists discovered not just 2 pools, but also 5 porticos, or covered walkways surrounding the pools. The North Pool, roughly 130 by 160 feet, likely served as a water reservoir. The South Pool was used as a mikvah, a ritual bath. This is where things get really interesting from a biblical and cultural standpoint, because Jewish law required ritual baths to be filled with living water, naturally supplied by rain or streams, not water drawn from other sources. The Northern Pool acted as a natural water source, feeding the Southern mikvah. Even if the mikvah water became ritually impure, it could be regarded as purified by contact with the natural water flowing from the other pool. The Southern Pool featured sets of steps with landings, perfect for people to enter gradually and safely. These landings weren't just practical, they offered places for the sick and hopeful to wait. A superstition had developed that whenever the waters were stirred, the first person to enter would be healed. But what caused this stirring? I believe that an archaeological discovery has solved the mystery. There was a channel that connected the 2 pools, and this channel allowed for water to rush from the reservoir to the mikvah, bubbling up and creating a stirring effect. In John's Gospel, Jesus heals a man who had been ill for 38 years. Jesus asks him, "Do you want to be healed?" The man explains he can't get into the pool first when the water is stirred. The Gospel of John reads in chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, Jesus said to him, "Get up, take your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. When archaeologists excavated the remains near St. Anne's Church in Jerusalem, they weren't just uncovering stone and mortar, They were confirming Scripture. The site matches the biblical description of the Pool of Bethesda in 4 striking ways. First, the discovery of the Pool of Bethesda included 5 porticos, covered walkways, just as John 5:2 describes. 4 of the porticos surrounded the pools, and the 5th stretched over the central wall, dividing the 2 pools. This is a highly specific architectural detail, confirmed. Second, the southern pool features 3 sets of steps with landings in between them. The archaeological design matches the biblical description right down to where the sick would gather. Those landings are perfect for people to wait, people like the man in John chapter 5, verse 3, who lay there hoping for healing. Third, archaeologists discovered a channel connecting the 2 pools, which accounts for the stirring of the water in John 5, verse 7. The northern pool probably acted as a reservoir feeding the southern mikvah. When water was released from the north into the south, it caused a bubbling or stirring effect, exactly what John 5:7 mentions. That strange verse about water being stirred suddenly makes perfect sense. It also provides a likely explanation for the superstition that grew around the idea of being the first to enter the stirred waters to be healed. Fourth and finally, the level of detail in John's Gospel betrays the fact that the author wrote in the 1st century, just as church history affirms. The author, John, knew the layout of Jerusalem, its customs, and its sacred places. These aren't vague generalities. They're the words of someone who was there and was a first-hand eyewitness. When we combine these archaeological findings with the discovery of Papyrus 52, or P52, the first known fragment of the Gospel of John, dated to the first half of the 2nd century, we have compelling evidence that the Gospel wasn't written centuries later, as some critical scholars have claimed. It was written in the 1st century by the Apostle John himself. The discovery of the Pool of Bethesda is far more than an archaeological triumph, although it is that as well. It's a faith-affirming finding. It reminds us that the Bible is rooted in real history, real people, real places, and real events. The text of the Bible is not only spiritually true, but historically reliable. And that is your faith-affirming finding of the week. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the archaeological record, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more discoveries that bring Scripture to life. Thanks for watching Faith Affirming Findings. See you next time.
Faith Affirming Findings podcast is a listener-supported podcast devoted to affirming your faith in the reliability of Scripture and illuminating your understanding of Scripture.
If you would like to help sponsor the Faith Affirming Finding podcast,
You can make a tax-deductible donation of any amount, large or small,
at faithaffirmingfindings.com. That's faithaffirmingfindings.com and click on the Give tab.
We hope you'll join us again next week for another exciting Faith Affirming Finding.